Hello, everybody. Welcome to the next webinar in the value pricing series. Today's conversation and today's webinar is on the value conversation. As a reminder, it's a part of the Firm of the Future webinar series. You can find out more in previous content at firmofthefuture.com, brought to you by Intuit. A little bit of context of where we're at. You can find, again, on firmofthefuture.com, the previous webinars up here. First is take a look at 10 steps to value pricing, get yourself oriented. We're going to go through a little bit of recap here today. Next is we've done a deep dive on bundling and pricing strategies. Today's conversation is around the value conversation specifically, and there's also a panel discussion on value pricing the journey and what to expect. We've got 4 fantastic folks on there. One is a Firm of the Future Top 20 winner, Chad Ridner from Two Roads. We've got Jason Blummer from Blummer CPAs. We've also got Blake Oliver of HPC and Jamie Johns from Sky Accountants down in Australia. So again, check that out. Go to firmofthefuture.com to find those pieces of content and webinars. Again, we're part of the different education tracks here. Today we're in that middle bucket, Become a Trusted Advisor. Who am I? My name is Ian Vason. I work at Carbon. You can learn more about us at carbonhq.com. I'm the VP of Product Marketing. I've been with Carbon for almost a year. We'll go into a little bit what Carbon is in a second, but before that I worked in the accounting industry for about 15 plus years, in technology 25 plus years, and I spent almost 10 years of some of that time at Intuit, where I led the QuickBooks Pro Advisor program. So you might have seen me before. Carbon, what is Carbon? We're the place to collaborate with your team and look after your clients. You can find out more at carbonhq.com. We aren't going to give a demo on Carbon. Quickly, what it is it's a place for you to manage all of your emails, to triage them, to be able to create and manage and track work. It's a collaboration tool for you to work with your colleagues in order to make sure that work gets done. All the information is put into timelines so you get the context of every project, contact, or client organization and what's happening. It manages your contacts in order to make sure that the information is tracked and you have everything at your fingertips. Work gets done through checklists, easy to create, easy to implement, able to transfer between different pieces of work. And then there's to-dos and ultimately track what's going on day in and day out, and everything's searchable. Again, if you're interested in Carbon, go to carbonhq.com. And if you want to see a demo, go to carbonhq.com/events. For today's conversation, I want to give a special thanks to the following folks. We're going to, the top 4 are actually going to be on the webinar with me on February 23rd. You also find it recorded and available on firmofthefuture.com. But also the other ones, 5 Ways Group, Zen Accounting, Live CA, and Gregory D. Barton. Gregory D. Barton is also a Firm of the Future Top 20 winner. So again, you're going to see some slides from them and some examples, and I want to just say thanks to those folks because I leveraged their websites and whatnot to give you some examples. Again, today, value pricing and the value conversation. So let's just dig on in. Bringing us all back to where we've started, from the top to 10 steps of value pricing. Again, when moving from an hourly billing model to value pricing, I broke it up into really 5 different steps or phases along the way. First was really to research to know what value pricing is all about. You're doing that right now with this webinar and with the other ones. So you've already taken the first step. The next one was really setup. Again, check out the pricing and bundling webinar that's posted as well, because that'll give you the details there. Today, we're actually focusing on putting it in practice, and really, we're going through 3 of the different the 10 steps to value pricing. So we're going to see that, and then on top of that's actually doing the actual work and learning from that experience and iterating on top of it. So the 10 steps to value pricing, they're listed out here. Again, if you want to have the overall webinar, go check firmofthefuture.com. We are going to focus on steps 6 through 8. From assessing the client situation all the way to when you present your packages and prices and close the deal. So again, 6, 7, and 8 is going to be our focus for today's talk. So let's jump into the meat. First, again, it's really assess the client situation. And if you recall, these are the different steps that I mentioned before. So what I'm going to do is show you the step. We'll talk about the steps again, and then we're going to jump into more detail and explain that more thoroughly on the following slides. So again, from the point of being able to, have your feet underneath you when you're talking to a client, whether the client be on the phone, whether the client's in person. In person's always better because you can read their cues and it starts a better relationship up front. But you want to do your homework. You want to, understand a bit about their business, understand, why they formed it. What do they sell? Are they selling widgets? Are they selling services? What size might they be? How many employees might they have? How long they've been around? Again, you can use various different tools like LinkedIn. You can look at their website. You can look at the founders or the people listed and see what their backgrounds are. There's different ways to get that, but that's providing you a basis and an understanding of ultimately who they are, so it can help you in the next steps in terms of understanding ultimately what they're all about and being able to help probe and drive more details so you can make a better informed decision around what the scope of the projects might be. Now, I put up here on the second one is greet, meet, listen, and probe. And what that means is this is just the engagement when somebody walks in the office or again on the phone, and you're trying to establish trust. You're trying to establish a rapport and really be able to go from not knowing one another to getting some understanding. And so the worst scenario here is you just start talking and you don't necessarily get them to open up and hear what they're about. And so that's why I say it's the listen and probe part. And again, small business owners, even individuals, we all like to talk about our passions. We like to have people appreciation of what we do and why we do it. So this isn't a hard task. It just it's a matter of giving the floor to the other side and letting them open up. I put up here, and we're going to talk about in a second around the 5 whys, so I'll save that for the next slide. But asking the 5 whys is a way to probe deeper and deeper and deeper, and it's ultimately to get to the root problems, go from the tip of the iceberg down to see the whole thing. And so it's a method we're gonna employ here in terms of helping us get to that underlying probing. And the reason for doing that is so that we can understand and evaluate the scope of the work that needs to be done. Typically, when someone comes in, they view it, it's similar to how people are approaching going to the doctor. They pre-diagnose themselves, even though they're not an expert, and go in and say, well, this is what I need. Well, the reality is there's a lot of underlying color to that, a lot of underlying detail. And so you want to use the probing to figure out, well, what's underlying that? What are the goals and why are they saying this? But what else is at play here? Because then that can help you evaluate the overall scope. It can help eliminate scope creep later, and it lets you be able to communicate your value and be able to become the trusted advisor by not just doing the tactical work, but then ultimately the strategic pieces that are going to not only solve the problem that they're facing that's right in front of them right now, but the underlying things that are creating that symptomatic issue. So with that being said, let's go into what I think the keys of assessment are. And I've broken them up into 2 major buckets. The first one, and the critical one here, is really to determine the root of the problem, the underlying needs and wants of that prospective client. And again, this is what I mentioned about before. It's getting the clients to talk and for you to be able to learn about what their business is all about. Again, what are they selling and why? Why did they get into the business? Who's involved? When they go to bed at night, what's the one thing that keeps them up? If they were to get, again, an unlimited amount of cash, or they were ultimately able to be freed of a singular problem, what would they focus on? How would they double their business between this year and next year? How would they be able to double their headcount? What are the things that are the barriers to that? So getting an understanding of how they tick and how they work can help you understand what to focus on. And so, I put up a couple questions here. You want to find out, well, what's working? What's going really well for them? And what isn't? And why isn't that working? Another way to look at that is asking someone, what bothers you? What irritates you right now about what you do and where and the context of your business? Because most likely the things that bother people the most are probably the areas to start with, because you're going to get the biggest bang for the buck, or it's the low-hanging fruit of the equation. Now, on the other side of that, what you want to understand are, what is their purpose? What is their business purpose? What is the business's overall goals? in terms of what they're trying to accomplish, but also what are the business goals for this quarter, this year? What are they trying to achieve? What is the big reason or the big purpose for business overall? And because the reason why you want to know that is as best you can, you want to ladder what it is, the work that we're going to be doing for them to ladder up to those ultimate goals, because that alignment of purpose and that alignment of goals allows for a true partnership to exist. And so getting a good sense of what the business is struggling with or trying to accomplish can help you in terms of the scope and where you're able to add the best value. Now, the probing the 5 whys. The 5 whys again is asking someone, so what am I struggling with? Well, the example might be, I'm really struggling with being able to deliver product in 60 days. Well, why are you having why are you having issues delivering product? Well, right now, let's say I'm only delivering it every 120 days, and it really just seems like maybe I've got some shipment issues. Well, why would you have shipment issues? Well, we changed providers, and we went with another transportation company recently, and it doesn't seem like they're providing us the best quality. Well, why did you change transportation companies? What was wrong with the other one that gave you better servicing? So again, I gave you a little bit of an example, but with the 5 whys, what you're doing is you're asking a question, you're taking the answer, reframing that with a why question, and continuing to go back and forth on that. And what that allows the prospective client to do is to give you more and more and peel back the onion to what is driving the underlying problems underneath. Because they know what it is, but they just don't know how to articulate it. And they haven't spent the time actually doing that. So you're going to help them uncover that. And that helps you take from the standpoint of somebody coming in and saying, well, I need tax work, or I need someone to help me with my bookkeeping, and understand, well, what underlying that is driving that need. Because we might be able to solve that in a much more elegant way that's going to provide you much more value, and then ultimately from us as the accounting professional provide more value for ourselves. And so again, that 5 whys is a really good tactic. The next last big piece here, and why we're doing all this, is to get an understanding of that project scope. Again, what someone will tell you is just going to be the tip of the iceberg. You want to understand what the whole thing is, because that's ultimately going to help you in terms of creating your bundles, presenting it, and having that value conversation. The second part of this is understand the client's expectations. What do they think they needed? I mean, they're going to tell you anyways, but what was that? And again, why did they say that? A big one here, and again, I had a conversation with a practitioner a couple of days ago, and it was a really good point, which is they said, I'd like to know up front what they were expecting in terms of time and cost, because if they're talking apples and I'm talking oranges, then I'm going to refer them to someone that's going to be talking, it's going to be in their ballpark, and not have to spend and invest the extra time that I'm going to hear, knowing it would never work out to begin with. And chances are they're probably going to come back to me anyways, because they're going to respect the fact that I've saved them time and referred it to someone that ultimately may or may not be able to service them. So again, asking up front here is, okay, you wanted this. Well, what were you expecting it would take, and in terms of how much you think you're going to have to spend, and when do you need it by? Because that can, again, it gates everything and gives you a good understanding. Also ask them what they're looking for in terms of their trusted advisor or their accounting professional, because it may be completely different than what you provide. It may also shed some light on how you want to gear your conversation when having that value conversation when talking about what you do and how you do it. So that way it gives you some insight of what you might want to be able to focus on. And then the last bit is what we talked about before. If we're going to work together, what does success look like? And does success on this project ladder up to the overall success of what your business objectives are? And again, so that's understanding and getting agreement on that from the client's perspective. Okay, so that's really the assessment phase in step 6, in terms of really just kind of getting the foundation of what it is that we're dealing with and a perspective around that. So that leads really to the value conversation. Actually now we've moved from the probing and the questioning and getting the baseline information to actually now speaking and conversing back. And so again, similarly like we did in the last one, I'm going to give you a bunch of examples on this one to show you how all these particular points come to bear. The first thing here on the process is we've now just done all that discovery work. we want to be able to retell back what we heard. We want to make sure that we're aligned with what their expectations were and what their desires are, because when we craft the packages, we want to make sure that it's fitting the needs that's been articulated. And so it's best to be able to repeat back, we've been talking about this, so it looks like these are the types of things you're needing, these are the types of problems that you're facing, and this is where we could add, this is where ultimately we can work together on it. And so a bit of replay on that is going to make sure and assure you that you've heard it right and that you can take the next step on your side successfully. The next one is, again, an extension of what those goals were before, is determine together what success looks like. Okay, if we're actually going to go work together and we're going to try and we're going to take on this particular part of your business or this set of work, then we need to accomplish X, Y, and Z in this time frame. And that should ultimately result in this particular time savings or freeing up these resources or providing this level of peace of mind so that you can be focusing on other things in the business. And so getting alignment that collectively, because that's what you're going to be measuring success in the project over the long haul. And again, having that tied together, really formulates that relationship and that partnership that you want to have. The next one's really setting the tone. And the tone is really in terms of, well, how do you operate? How does someone, one of your clients, work within your own processes? What does an engagement look like? So, what is the process around that, and how do we work together? And the reason for doing that is, again, every client's actually an extension of your own practice, if you think about it. If you're going to sign up to do it, let's say doing bookkeeping services with them, and they've said, okay, I'm going to do the bank rec, and you're going to be doing the other parts like AR and AP, you're held to the fact that if they don't do the bank rec when they say they're going to do it, that the whole project is not going to go as planned. And so essentially they're acting one of your bookkeepers on staff in some capacity. And so again, thinking about how we're tied in this together and understanding it's that partnership really helps in understanding how you operate and how it's not just something that's out of sight, out of mind, but we're both intrinsically involved and interested in the success of prospective clients' business overall. The next one's really, and this is really where the rubber meets the road in the value conversation, it's you got to sell your services, your processes, and your expertise. It really comes back to building, and it goes to the last point, that's really building confidence that you're the best on the planet. What makes you unique? Why should I feel confident working with you? Have you done this before? The services, is it every service? Or again, are the services specific? Do you have a niche that you focus on? Do you work with customers of a certain size? I work with small businesses, $5 to $10 million. They're manufacturing clients. They have multiple offices. We do these types of services with them. Our processes are built and geared to what you do, Mr. or Mrs. Prospective Client. And so it's that articulation of what makes you unique. And the uniqueness is not just necessarily your certifications, your distinctions, but it's the whole picture. And that includes your processes. That includes how you approach an engagement. And so you need to think about that and be able to articulate that in conjunction with what is the work that's going to be performed. And in that, you want to be able to instill that confidence that you can help. You want to be able to point to different proof points of how you've been successful in the past. You need to exude that confidence that this is not your first go at this. You want to be able to show that, and it may be years of experience, but it may be the clients that you have. It may be in terms of your approach to the problem. But again, that confidence is really going to be able to drive my appreciation and willingness to pay for the services that you're going to provide. So let's get some examples here. The first is setting the tone with your client. I pulled this off of Gregory D. Barton's CPA and Associates website. And what's interesting here is you've got a nice little dichotomy here. You've got someone in a suit, their shoes are off, with a martini glass in a swimming pool. And so again, if I'm looking for someone to do my individual tax returns and I'm expecting a 65-year-old in a suit and more stodgy and so forth, this clearly is not going to be the right place for me to go. However, if I'm looking for some, different ways of thinking about this, some fresh ideas and so forth, this is going to maybe sing to me. And so again, You can see here, even in the wording, it's a unique blend of advanced accounting techniques and old-fashioned service. And again, that's where the suit and the pool start to come together. And so, again, it's not this is on a website, but imagine in the conversation you need to be conveying, well, this is what we do, and this is how we do it. This is our culture. This is how we approach clients, and so forth. Because that tone is going to set whether or not, again, it's a relationship. Is the relationship going to work? Are we going to be compatible? And are we going to be able to partner together to get the different requirements done? The next one here is I bring up an example from Jason Bloomer's CPA's site, and it's really articulating the services you provide. So in here, he's rolled it together into 6 overarching services. And so there's certain things that maybe I'm going to ask that he's not going to do, or his firm's not going to do. And this is a culmination or a simplification of how those things are, so we can have a conversation around, well, I may only need one of these, but this is how the other ones interplay with that and ultimately provide the best outcomes. And so, it's that articulation, that sort of clear, concise conversation around, well, what is coaching and why is it important? From what you've articulated on your problems, coaching may be really important because it'll help you determine maybe the root problems or the solutions you need to go to. But again, the articulation needs to be really crystal clear and really formulated into a cohesive argument. I really like this. I'm going to give 2 slides here from Two Roads. And the first one here was, this one builds confidence in a pretty interesting way. And it really speaks to, and you're going to see the next slides really around the process. But here, they convey in some really, really interesting ways that they know what they're doing. Again, just the fact that they've got this map on the screen and it says we provide the map shows that they're confident that they know how to do this and they've been there before and they can get me there as well. And then the choice of the words down below, peace of mind, accuracy, integrity, these are different things that I attribute that I want to be able to be a part of as a client. And they've got the words there, understand small business, freedom to grow. Again, aspirational in tone. But again, it goes back to that tone and that confidence being exuded in the conversation. Again, this is a conversation on a website. You can only imagine what it would be in person when talking to Chad. Now, again, what they've done here is the second level of that was building confidence on the on the process. And so, from the point of starting your pursuit of freedom, again, using very choice words there, but let's get started. Let's survey the landscape. Let's draft the roadmap. Let's meet who you're going to be working with, and then we're off to the races to get the work done. And so that process makes me feel confident that I know how we're going to work together, and I know that I'm going to have somebody with me along the path. I feel like I'm comfortable with that path, and so ultimately, I can sign up for something like this because I feel I've got the full set of information that I ultimately know what to do. And the last bit here is communicating the value. I think, again, Chad Davis over at LiveCA does a fantastic job in this. Similar to what Chad Ridner from Two Roads has done, you can see the process there on the right. I know it's small, but again, a discovery phase. We're going to demo to you what we use in our processes and how we do it. Here's what our pricing is, and you can see the pricing is not listed pricing. It goes to this other screen, which is we price every customer individually. Probably one of the best implementations of value pricing out there that I've seen. And what they talk about in the pricing bucket on the process there is all in terms of value and the value that what they can help bring out in your company. So again, the pricing is reconstituted into a value conversation, and it goes to kickoff and to the work began. So definitely a site to check out over at liveca.ca. And so what are the keys to the value conversation? First is you really got to ensure you're both on the same page because if you go to the next step and you're not on the same page, it's going to be apparent and it's ultimately everything's just going to fall apart. And so this goes back to an alignment of goals, alignment of what the scope is going to be, making sure that you're addressing the needs and wants of the prospective client. The next thing is really framing that all back into those aligned goals. Again, I would have an understanding of what the overall business wants are and make sure this project ladders into that because I'm going to be bringing that back up in terms of that value conversation. You have to constantly emphasize why you're unique and you need to apply that to what we're talking about in terms of the work and the scope of work because that uniqueness is where the value is going to be placed when I look at, when I'm evaluating the packages that you give me perhaps and the prices that are associated. Because the more unique you are, the more interesting you are, the more confident that I feel, the higher the willingness I am to pay for those services, and the more willingness I am to doing more work with you versus less. Outlining your process and how together we can partner to succeed. We've covered that pretty thoroughly. And then really communicating the value of working with you. And this is where, again, laddering it not necessarily to, well, it's, you're gonna feel peace of mind at the end of it, but trying to quantify that into, working with us, your staff is going to get back 4 hours per week. How much does that cost you today? By the way, if you work with us, Mary that's doing this particular activity, we can take that over, and that frees her up to be doing this, which is what you ultimately want to be doing anyway. So we can take care of that. Think of it in terms of those terms, in terms of how are you giving back to the business, those critical resources, time, needs, money, whatever it might be, that's very valuable to them, that they're going to be willing to pay for. Again, offer to connect them to the success stories you have. Generally, people won't take you up on that. But again, when somebody says, we're really unique, we do this really well. And by the way, I've got 3 clients that I've done this before that would be happy to talk to you about what I've done and how I've done it. That right there, puts that seal of approval, just brings the confidence level to a whole new height. And so again, you want to offer that in the conjunction with that value conversation. And then my last point here is, in this stage, it's really about empathy, listening, and confidence. Empathy really helps someone to be able to relate and build a bond, because you can understand the trouble that they're in and have the feeling that you're in it with them and you want to help them get out of it. It's very positive from someone on the other side. An active listener is the act of showing that in place in terms of listening. Again, and that's a sense of empathy, or part of empathy, but understanding it and then reciting it back shows that you really care and that you really are processing what's going on. And then when you're actually communicating back, both on the time or the tone, the process, your experiences, your expertise and the like, that confident delivery, that being able to convey that you know what you're doing, again, helps seal the deal in lack of better words. So let's go to the last part, which is presenting your packages and pricing. Again, in steps 3 and 4 and in the article that's available, you can get a sense of how to do that. So again, this is how you're going to recraft that in the moment with the prospective client that you have. Put up a couple of different quotes here. One from Chad Ridner. Picture yourself in your prospect's shoes. How do you like to buy? Chances are you like a buffet of choices at a consistent price. Prospects generally appreciate the same thing. So again, packaging things up and being able to give them the opportunity of choice, or the sense of choice, is very powerful. Same thing from, I gave another quote here from Jamie Johns. When you package services, you give options, and clients get to choose if they want fries or not. You never leave money on the table. And again, you're going to see here when you present the packages, you're able to articulate, well, here's what I recommend for you. If you decide that you want to go cheaper, this is what you're going to give up, and this is the value you're going to lose. And if you decide that you need more services, well, here's what we can provide, and here's the extra benefits you're going to get. And so, again, it provides you a conversation beyond, here's what I have, do you take it or leave it? Again, that sense of choice is really important in the engagement of a value conversation. So again, going back to present your packages and prices, I'm going to give some examples afterwards here. But again, you're going to present 3 modified options. I use the word modified because in a true value pricing scenario, and the reason why we've done that client assessment is so that we can go back to those templated packages that we have and adjust them to fit what this client is going through and what they actually need. And so again, you're going to be using the middle one as the recommended one based on what you've assessed, probably with a little bit of extra services in there in order to make sure that you're able to provide more because you know that you can deliver a higher client satisfaction with that. If you have a chance before you present this, you want to go to the pricing committee and and that could be your spouse if you're by yourself, or it could be your partners in the firm, if a larger firm, but getting a sense of if the prices that you're going to place on these that you're going to present, are they accurate for the client's scenario that's in play? You're then going to present the price, but in presenting the price and presenting the packages, you're going back and referring to the value. Again, what this middle package, for example, can provide you will ultimately be able to save you this much time, free up these resources. It'll give you this level of peace of mind because we're taking these particular pieces off and doing it for you at 100% accuracy. Again, I'm making that up, but you can see how you don't want to just present it and leave it there. You want to be able to have a dialogue and go back to all those things you've already discussed about why you're unique and why you can deliver that in the best way. You then again are going to define what the engagement, so it's a bit of a further extrapolation or detail around what you communicate in terms of your process. This is what we do from here. Maybe it's, we sign the T's and C's and we go, we have an onboarding call. We're going to need this from you. We're going to provide you this. We're going to give you training. From that training, you're ultimately going to be owning these pieces. We're going to graduate you up over time as you learn more and more. Again, you get the idea. And setting expectations around, here's the timing that we're looking at, here's what you're going to own, here's what we're going to own, and then ultimately we're going to get to these outcomes at the end of this project. And then you're going to do, at this point, you're going to make the close, and as soon as you get the close, you got to schedule that first meeting and get those assumptions of what needs to be done between now and then on the table. And the reason for that is it's going to mitigate and shrink your onboarding time, which is where, again, all things can go sideways. So again, you want to schedule and get that meeting going as quickly as possible. So first thing here is, again, are you fixed fees? Are you value pricing? I put up 3 different variations here. Again, Sky Accountants, they do a minimum typical open-ended sort of scenario here with really a fixed fee, so per month for each package. You got a hybrid in the middle, that's from 5 Ways Group. They start from a from price, and they've got different packages. And again, depending on what you pick, it depends on the services you get. And then Chad over at Live CA, again, true value pricing, where the packages and the prices are discussed in the point in time. Nothing's been talked about beforehand or presented on the website. I brought this example up from Zen Accounting. Again, when you provide packages, this is that good, better, best model example. You can notice here that it's been simplified down to only about 10, 12 different categories. Each package going from small, medium, large, or in this case, simply, absolute, and supreme. It's a stair step, so I'm able to quickly read and process it from left to right. Typically, you'd have in that middle one like a burst, or you'd say it's recommended or most popular, whatever that would be, because that's the starting point of the conversation. Based upon you, prospective client, I think the absolute Zen would be the way to go. And here's why. Here's what you're going to get. Now, at that point, they're going to evaluate and they go, well, what's the difference between the simply and the absolute? You go, well, that's great. What you're not going to get are these particular pieces. And, if you take that away, here's ultimately what you're going to be giving up in terms of you might have to do this much more work on your side. This is something that we're going to take on or you're going to miss out that could provide quicker return of investment to what we've talked about in terms of our outcomes. And then likewise, you can go on the other side of the equation and say, look, if you're interested, I didn't recommend it, but you can add these additional components to your package, which is in the Supreme, and you're going to then meet your project objectives this much quicker. You're going to have to do this much less. You're going to be able to get this sort of visibility. And so you start in the middle, and then you can articulate the differences. And what that allows the small business owner to do is to understand what's really important to them and start to have the conversation on which one of these categories is something that they got to have and some things that aren't. And that's how you can then steer to whatever is the right package for them, and then ultimately understanding what's valuable or not. And that helps in the pricing. Again, here is an example of what I call the minimum typical open-ended. You can see on the far right from Sky Accountants, they've got this custom one. And again, you can see the difference here between a stair-step chart and one that's not. This is a much harder for you to quickly process versus the other one, you can quickly see through it. What I want to bring up here was there's a question regarding when you're talking about value pricing. The reason why we did the exercise prior around, if I've got 3 different bundles and I've set 3 different prices, the BATNA, Best Alternative to Negotiate Agreement, an ideal price, which is, my fist pump price, or, what the higher bar would be. You've created already, and I said what you call expected prices, which is that middle ground, which you typically would have for your typical client. And what you're doing here is based on that assessment you've done before. You now have a framework to be able to understand, well, is this client really typical or not? Are they more complicated? Well, if they are more complicated, I need to charge more. Are they less complicated and more price sensitive, then maybe I should charge less. And so that's what ultimately is able to get you to that middle line there. Again, this client seems to be more difficult. It seems like there's more I need to do. I've added some more services in this than I typically would. And so I'm going to charge them towards the higher bound of my price thresholds that I had. And so now when I present the packages, I'm going to be presenting it with a $450 a month price tag, $700 per month, $900 per month. So that's why we do these things in powers of threes and why we do the pre-work, because it helps us in being able in the moment to be able to present something that's going to be meaningful and provide the highest value to the customer and the highest value to us in our business. So the keys to the close, to kind of bring this all back together. One is you want to frame the packages around what you've heard. So again, you're taking all that information in and you're recrafting your packages according to what is needed. Making sure that middle package is the one that's going to be delivering ultimately what has been articulated and discussed, and probably it has a little bit extra in terms of the services that are listed in it. Again, that's your recommended package. You then can use that to articulate what they're going to give up with the smaller package or what they're going to gain in the larger one. So it starts that conversation to really be able to drive into which categories are really important for them. And then in that conversation, you're constantly reinforcing why each one of these categories you're delivering better and how each one of these is going to be important in terms of meeting the goals that the client has overall. Then you're going to lay out what it is to move forward and the expectations around that. Got to close that sale, and then you got to schedule that first meeting. So that's how that all comes into play and how it all comes together. So that's basically it from the content that we had today. Just going to wrap it up real quick. Again, we talked today about steps 6 through 8 of the 10 steps to value pricing, assessing the client situation, having the value conversation, presenting the packages and the prices. It fit within the context of these particular 5 phases. Again, it really starts with that value conversation when you're putting in practice. And if you remember, again, the key nuggets here are probe to learn what's going on from the business owner, using the 5 whys as a tactic to do that, making sure you're getting understanding and alignment around the goals of the project and the scope. So that way you can articulate what value and your uniqueness and what's special about you, your processes, your services, and your expertise in order to deliver on those. That helps you in the framing and re-architecture of your bundles and your prices so that when you can present them and have a conversation about the services that you're offering and why, and what value that ultimately is going to return to them and how you're uniquely positioned to provide that value. And then that really goes to the conversation to close. So those are, again, the key takeaways. Again, this month's all been about value pricing. You can go up to firmofthefuture.com and get the pre-recorded or the recorded version of the 10 steps to value pricing. You'll also be able to find the value pricing, the journey and what to expect. That's a panel discussion. Again, I mentioned with Jason Bloomer. It's going to be Chad Ridner, Jamie Johns, and Blake Oliver. Fantastic. They've been doing this for, each one of these have been doing it for a long time, so they're going to give us some really good tips and tricks. And then also check out the article on bundling and pricing strategies to really get an understanding how to create those packages from the start in your draft form. Coming up in March, you can sign up for the webinar on March 9th at 10 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. A fantastic one really on practice improvement and efficiency. The focus is really how do you get efficiency in your practice regarding your email, your clients that you serve and the communications around them, and then internally with your team in order to make sure the work that you have gets done on time and on quality. We'll be doing late in March the top 10 things efficient firms do, and then there's going to be a whole series of articles, all again geared on practice efficiency and improvement. To sign up, to learn more, to find the registration, go to firmofthefuture.com. Again, there's a lot more content going up there, so keep checking. as we provide more each and every month. Again, I want to thank you from the Carbon team. Carbon is the place to collaborate with your team and look after your clients. You can go to carbonhq.com to learn more. In addition, here's my contact information. You can email me. You can call my cell. Just don't do it really late at night. And the website for Carbon. So again, ian@carbonhq.com. If you have any questions regarding this content or value pricing in general, I'm happy to answer them. Myself, Intuit, the firm of the future, Carbon, we all thank you for your time. And hopefully this is helpful in being able for you to take that next step along your value pricing journey. Thank you so much. Bye.